Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode. Marketing Agency Exposed. Ken, you're looking very red there with all your red paraphernalia.
Red?
Are we doing a good job exposing? I don't know if we are.
Oh, today we're going to expose.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's something everyone wants.
Really? Everybody wants?
To charge
but not
more
everybody
money.
does?
To charge more money.
What?
To raise your prices.
You're jumping right in.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
No small talk today.
No, we can small talk, but I'm just saying,
it's fine.
that's
Good.
why people are here.
Yeah.
To listen to the secrets.
Well, us figure out us pursue the secrets here, and then people listen. That's kind of our whole show, right? Is like, we don't have all the answers, but we're trying to figure it out actually live.
Yeah.
And hopefully everyone gets to sit in and listen on that, because that's what I would want.
Yeah.
So, not that we're getting to current events. Lots happening, and depending on when this was released, but I'm sure it will continue. The banking world, the tech world, finances, money. Man, have you guys been to the grocery store lately and seen the prices on like just silly stuff? Not silly stuff. Things like eggs, and just prices are doubled almost.
Yeah,
across the board.
I'm going to buy some silly putty, and it was up double.
Silly
The
stuff.
prices are not only double,
It was
but
silly.
like they ration the
yeah.
eggs.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
some things are down, like energy and fuel, but
Yeah. So
It's a
with
lot
all
of
that,
If you're at the grocery store, you really bringing prices down after you've been able to raise them?
no, you don't do that with anything. You can't. It's hard to lower a price.
Yeah, you're
once
not going
you
to lower
raise
it. You're like, oh, people are used to paying this now. Why would
That's
I
right.
lower it even
It's the
after?
new norm.
Yeah.
so I think that trickle down affects everybody. And so I think a lot of agency people, a lot of marketing people that listen to this podcast are thinking, okay, it's time for me to raise my prices because, what I charged for something or what I have to pay people or how far that money goes doesn't go as far anymore. So we're in an interesting time where maybe you had a set rate, hourly rate, project rate for things that for the last few years made sense, but now it no longer makes sense. And you're struggling with how do you raise prices, how often, and how do you do it? So let's talk about that today.
Yeah. And I also want to talk about like the hourly rate, not what we charge, is just the term, the hourly rate. I think that's, for business owners, that's kind of it's a swear word. It's cussing. It's a cuss word.
It's actually none of your business.
I like that.
Do I walk into...
Are you saying that to me right now? Like, that's not...
No.
I like that.
I'm just saying,
Yeah,
like,
it
in
is
what
what it
industry
is.
do you walk into Walmart and be like, why is this so expensive? What's your hourly rate?
Yeah.
And are they going to say, oh, here's what it is? No. That's Walmart.
Yeah, I know. One of the things I like to talk a little bit and unpack is the mindset of the customer. Because I think that a lot of customers deem certain services that we provide as very commodity businesses. And they don't really understand the value of what we're creating or what the value will be to them within a year or two down the road. And I think, I'd like to understand a little bit how you guys get your customers to the point where they can see that, and how do you communicate that to them? Because I think that's the biggest challenge, right? It's like, if 50% of your customers don't look at every project not as a value-based pricing model, but what's it going to cost me, and I'm going to go get other bids, and I'm going to commoditize this thing that you are telling me it's amazingly important. What do you do?
Man, well, I think a lot of agencies fall into this, and I think everyone benefits from achieving what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Like, everyone benefits from it, because, and I'll also say that I think it hurts both the client and the service provider to have hourly based, cost based, commoditized or perceived commoditized services that are essentially a race to the bottom with slim to no margins, because no one wins. There's no innovation. There's no investment into the industry. There's no money to invest. There's the good people go out of business. The clients get no results. I mean, it's a perpetual spin to the bottom. I think it's bad for everybody. So I think I really believe, like, whoever you are listening to this, whether you're paying for services or providing services, look, we all pay for services and we all provide for services. Okay. Having someone that's priced really well for the value you get. And that means, like, I mean, you pay what they need and they should be paid well for delivering really good value. And you get in use value more than that service cost you, then that is the way to be going. And I feel like, well, not I feel like, I know a lot of the industry has gone the other way. My kind of baseline opinion, and this is part of my business strategy, we've talked about it a lot before, I know you guys would agree with this, is you have to realize what you do, and you can't be a commodity, or if you are, you need to be okay with that. And I wouldn't be, but I think realizing that certain services are commoditized and getting out of that is strategically moving from a commodity is number one. Now, the unfortunate thing is there's no real commodity in what we do, but there is a lot of perceived commodity, meaning a lot of people come and are like, oh, you're doing Facebook ads and you're doing Facebook ads and you're doing Facebook ads. And so I'm just going to choose between all three and pick the cheapest. But, like, clearly those are not actually true commodities. There is a lot. I mean, I'm not a Facebook ads company. I would never be, because it is perceived as such a commodity. But bottom line is, even inside of that, it's not a nail. Like, you're not buying, it's not like making nails. Like, there are, I mean, like the things that you use to, not fingernails, but right. Like, they are, there's advertising, there's skill, there's mastery, there's copyright, there's all sorts of things that go into being successful at running Facebook ads, right? So the fact that you're even calling them Facebook ads is kind of silly.
And I think it's not just the skill set to run the Facebook ads, it's the results that you're going to provide for your customer.
It's just obviously not a commodity, but it's perceived as one.
It can be, yeah.
Often.
Yeah.
Same thing with Google. I mean, all the ads platforms can be seen as commodity if you just want to turn things and turn buttons on.
I just think, I'll stop talking. I'll let Bob. You seem like you have something to say here.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and offer the first thing that I would say is always sell the human, don't sell the technology. I think people buy expertise. They should, unless you are stuck into that hamster wheel of selling a service, selling an hourly rate, selling even that. It's a fine line to say sell a result, because yes, you do want to sell a result, but the result can be the commodity, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if all you're selling is, we get really good results with digital ad placements.
Right. It's not specific.
That's not specific. And it's, well, these guys get good results. And then you get into the game of, I can go over to this ad agency and get better results. But sometimes better results, quote, is a worse experience, is spending more money, is not having the relationship that you need. So I have always been successful in selling my expertise as what differentiates me as a person, why am I unique, and why am I an expert in these areas, and why can I be a fit for you and what your needs are. And then beyond that, then we get into, okay, now here's the items that we do. And I think if you focus on the human instead of the technology, you win every time.
So you went into the next thing that I was going to say, which is you have to not be a commodity and not perceived as a commodity. Those are
There's
two
only
different
one
things.
of you.
Yeah, and you have to put yourself in what many would call a category of one, which we've talked, and you can go back to episodes where we talked about what's your superpower and your unfair advantages and all those kind of things. But the way you don't be a commodity is you become the only option if you want this thing. And we can get into strategically how you do that, but that strategically, we can get into tactically how you do that, but strategically, you need to be in a category of one.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is about how do you raise prices,
and that's how you raise prices,
right? Like if you want me and my expertise or my team, this this is what it's going to cost. And now if you want a service that does all these things, there's a bazillion people out there can do it. But if you want us and what we do uniquely for you, this is our price, and it's going up. And we can talk about how to raise prices. But I think so many solopreneurs, agency people.
Well, then you can charge whatever you want.
But
as long as it's relative to the value.
Can I ask you a question?
Sorry,
If you have this unique value proposition that makes you the only one, what is it? If it's not results for your customers, and
it has to be results.
There's got to be results in there. What do you find the customer that you have? What resonates with the customer to the point where they're like, oh yeah, that is what I want, and that's nobody else is providing that. So therefore, we're gonna sign with you guys.
It's what you just said.
Forward.
With that response from the client, if you can do that, that's what they're buying.
So
they're buying that. Oh, Brad and Anthem Republic, they're different. They get me. They've said things, and they apparently can give me the results that other agencies that I've talked to,
or they've
can't.
had a successful record of
right.
results that.
But it's not about it's not about like what's on paper. It's I connect with them, and they get me, and they see me. When you think of great historical ad agents, you think of Ogilvy and Mather, right? When you go back and when I read their content, even today, or I think of them, yes, they've done great work and maybe gotten good results, but I don't know what that data is.
Yeah.
What I think about is this famous copywriter, this guy who writes for, or was the president, or Ogilvy himself.
Sorry. Yeah.
People reading his quotes and books.
Yeah.
You remember the person and their strength and their uniqueness and what they brought to it, that they were masters at ads. They were masters. But yes, you remember their work, but really you go back and you read about them and what was unique about them and how they did it.
I believe you said a really key word, famous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that strategically, if you want to be a category of one, you have to get famous at something, for something. And I use that word intentionally. I don't think it's just well known.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's just an authority. I think the people who, and I don't think it's fame for fame's sake. It's certainly not a influencer.
Right.
But I think to be a true, like the one, you've got to be famous for a thing. That takes a lot of time and work, and really a lot of messaging and all that kind of stuff. But it's worth it because you know because Ogilvy and all the famous people or all the famous companies that you know out there are in their own category. People go to them because of their reputation.
Yeah.
That's why the old agencies always put their last names on stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we do some things that are unique. The challenge sometimes is that a certain customer may not be able to see it, or may not, once you even present it and really, talk about the uniqueness, it's not valuable to them. But one thing that I noticed with all of our customers in new business that I think we've been able to do that is maybe it is unique is, and it's definitely makes a big difference in separating yourself from competition, is that we show love for their brand and what their objectives are more than they do. Like literally, it's this idea that you care so much and you express that care, and you not just express it in fake words, but you express it in action, and you show them things what they can be, and you've actually got down and deep and dirty into their stuff already, and you've been able to show them how much you care about it, and then and also the alignment that you have with their goals. And I think to me that's the additional stuff that is not about the projects, it's not about the marketing, it's not about the advertising, it's not about any of that stuff. It's just the saying, hey, I care enough that I'm going to get to know you, and get to really understand you, so that when we talk, we're speaking the same language, but I'm also having conversations with you that are much deeper probably than just surfacey sales talk, And so I think for me, that's what I can personally offer, because that's just who I am as a person. But I think some of our staff is like that too. They have this ability to have strong empathy and they can put their emotional life into it. And I think that's a unique thing that a lot of companies don't do.
In my experience, all of the, each company has that thing. Well, maybe not. But like all the good companies, they have a thing that is like very unique, right?
Yeah.
And that thing often comes from the founder. Even with companies where the founder's not around anymore, like their legacy goes through. So like, my advice, and because I practice this, and it's my advice to myself, is to lean in, figure out personally like what it is that you love and that you're better than anyone in the world at. Sorry, my tongue is twisted, and then really lean into that. And even if the rest of the team isn't that, like strategically, it doesn't even matter what the thing is as long as you could fulfill it. But strategically, you need to stand out for something. And you're gonna do that most genuine if it's what you stand out for.
Yes.
And then the rest of the team will kind of like adopt that because they're around you for a reason, and start to lean into that into the world and like start to become famous for that thing. I think that's step one in not being a commodity. Is pursuing that path. Now, I think that there are more tactical things that will move the needle on pricing, which we should get into, because this whole episode is about, and maybe we need more, but like, how do we raise prices? But I think strategic, if you can be a category of one, and you do that based on like your uniqueness, personal uniqueness.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how big your team is.
And before we get into the tactics of how to raise prices, I'd like to say something that we've talked about on this podcast before. We've actually talked around it, but it's really, 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 really important when we talk about this subject of raising prices. And if you're scared to raise prices, or you don't believe you can get what you need, or you can't raise prices, or your customers won't pay that, I would really, really challenge you to work on your own attitudes of scarcity and abundance mindsets. Because if you're stuck in this, well, I'm only worth this much, or I'm going to lose a client, or there's only so many clients out there that I can get, that's really, I think, at the heart of being able to raise prices regularly without pain and without struggle in your agency. Really comes back to that, in my opinion.
Totally. It's the belief, and there's that side of it. And if you still even can't get past it, this has really helped me and a lot of people I know. Ask yourself a couple questions. Like, number one, you can ask these two questions. What's the most someone charges for what I do in the entire world?
Yeah.
Like, what is the most? And then if you don't know that answer, then could you ask yourself the question, well, is there someone that charges 10 times what I charge right now for what I do? Now, when I say what I do, it may not be exactly what you do, but kind of like the result that I create, right? And then get yourself, and if you still, whether or not you can answer those questions, once you can see it happening, like if you can get yourself around someone who I've been honestly, like, thankful to be able to be in the room like a bunch of you guys have, with some people that, do ridiculous amounts of money per day. I know someone who charges over $200,000 a day just to consult. Okay. So if you ask yourself, well, I struggle I'm not even making $200,000 in a year. Maybe I struggle with even charging $200,000 for a project. How is it possible that this person, there are clearly people in the world, how is it possible this person charges $200,000 for a day? Now, they're not scamming anyone. They're actually creating, obviously, multiples of that value. And how are they doing that? It's possible. Once you realize it's possible, you give yourself the permission to say, okay, it's not impossible. And so I just need to figure out how.
So with the $200,000 a day, is there a step to getting that? Like you have to have a strong public
Probably.
persona.
Maybe
you probably have
not.
to be probably a public speaker who has a lot of authority in the space.
There's one person I know who is not
Really?
and doing that. There's another person I know who is, but also only in a niche area. Like you wouldn't even know his name most likely.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's necessarily a requirement, but I do think you're right. Like at least in my opinion, you've got to be really good at something. You've got to know what that is, and you have to own that what that is.
How narrow do you think a person needs to be in their own space to be able to 10x their current billing?
That's a great question.
Like how narrow do you have to get to the point where you are the only one in the state?
I think there's
country.
I think there's two answers to that. There's the narrow on the side of the individual, me, and then there's the narrow on the other side of the niche that I'm going after.
Market,
like
the niche.
You said, you wouldn't know this person because it's a very niche. The people in that niche, right? Even if it's 100 people, even if it's 2 people, even if it's 1,000 people,
very desirable.
He's very desirable and famous.
Yeah.
Now the other thing is your own personal side and how you project that out. But I think it's really, really important today. And to answer your question, Brad, I think more and more it's going to become more important with what we're seeing in the world changing, technology, artificial intelligence. Everything we're talking about is going to become more rare and more rare and more rare, right? Like really good copywriters and ghostwriters that made $100,000 to write a book with someone that you would pay. Their job is no longer going to be $100,000. 95% of them is going to be, I don't need you anymore. I can go to ChatGPT-4 and then pay someone $10 an hour just to edit it a little bit.
And it doesn't matter if it's not as good. It's still the perception is the same.
But there will be people, and we'll have this conversation 3 years from now, that will not make $100,000. They'll make $500,000 being a ghostwriter, because the true experts are going to rise up, right?
Well,
because everything else is going to be commoditized down.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about.
It's the same thing. It's like they also say that in the higher education space, that a lot of these people who run the higher will be the true folks who actually have the knowledge will rise up, and those who don't won't. And the same thing. And I think every business is that we're gonna find that we're gonna kind of be separate. It's gonna separate out.
Yes.
And I think the thing is right now is that right now is a good time, I think, to start to, even if you're like, hey, we want to charge 10x in 2 years, right? We have kind of a roadmap for that, what that might look like. You have to bring into play AI and how that's going to affect your business, because it's going to affect every business. And we're going to have to bring in some of the things that are going on in this world, technology, to try to figure out, does that reduce my sweet spot? Is my sweet spot becoming diluted because of it, or is it becoming less diluted?
And your clients will expect you to not raise your rates, but the opposite, right?
I have clients now that literally say, well, they're saying, like, we give them prices. Well, can't you just write that with ChatGPT and charge me like half the price? I mean, literally, I have clients that said that to me. Right. I had a conversation.
Yeah, that's going to be.
And it's nothing wrong with that. That's a smart thing from the person who said it. It doesn't offend me, because trust me, we're all looking at that, But the reality is that what they've done now is they've already started that narrative that if it's this stuff that used to cost money shouldn't cost anything anymore.
Right. I would propose that the biggest barrier to raising prices and to charging more is yourself.
Yes.
Like to anyone listening to this, if you're like, I could never, my clients would never pay 10 times that, or I think it's wrong to charge 10 times that. You might be all over the board, but I would say this, like, it is better for everyone, like clients primarily, if you charge more. Mm-hmm. They will be more invested. You will have more to create success.
Yes.
Like there's no one I've been on both sides of the equation. No one wins when you charge too little. Yep. Zero. You don't create a great product. You're overworked. You don't have any money. you go out of business or you don't have enough to invest into yourself, your team, whatever it is, everyone loses. Everyone loses. You're required to charge more money because that's the only way you can create more results.
Right.
And if you feel like if you feel bad about that, then I would question yourself and why you're in business and why you're doing this.
Scarcity thing.
Yeah, because it's bad for everybody. And you may think, oh, well, I'm charging a lot. I'm doing really well. But you may be charging a lot, but you may be doing too much and still leaving it to where you have zero profit. See, what I'm saying is you need to charge more and not do more because you create more value.
Right.
Okay, you have to figure that out. And the only way to figure that out is you have to, we did 2 episodes on creativity. You have to be creative and step outside the box and be like, I'm going to forget about, all the agency baggage. Agencies only work this way and agencies only charge this way and agencies only do retainers. You got to forget about all that stuff. In fact, don't call yourself an agency. Just like call yourself like you're a different type of organization. And then you really need to think outside that box, and you really need to say, okay, well, if none of that existed, how could I communicate what I do from a value perspective to a certain person? And I think what that means is literally on your website, stop calling yourself a web development agency or a marketing agency or an advertising agency. Congratulations, you just commoditized yourself if you did that. Because there's, how many others are there? Someone's going to line them all up and look at all the prices and pick the cheapest one. And that is simply not what you are. So I would challenge everyone to figure out how you can not call yourself even an agency and just call yourself what it is that you bring uniquely to anyone else.
Do we need to change the name of this podcast?
Yeah, we're blank exposed. Blank exposed.
I would say one thing that if you want to position yourself to raise your prices and be in demand in the coming future, I think there's 3 things, in my opinion, that I've observed that you need to focus on that will make you valuable. Your knowledge, your strategic ability, so it's knowledge, strategy, and attribution. Those are the 3 things that if you can be an expert and or speak intelligently and guide clients through that, you will always be in demand. Everything else around that, the execution, the building, the design, all of those things can be done by AI. It can be done by humans at a commoditized rate. You can build, your team, but knowledge is only coming from your brain and experience. And if you can communicate that effectively and relevantly to your clients, that's the first step. Strategy is how you put all that together and give them a plan and go, here's really what you need. And here's your unique DNA for what you're trying to do, whether B2B or B2C. Here's how to put it together. And then attribution is how do you connect all those dots and show them your knowledge and your strategy worked because of it. And if you can do those 3 things and then everything else is secondary, you'll be in high demand. And that's honestly, that's the marketer of the future. It's not the hands-on, it's not a whole creative team. It's not a whole, those are great. And those will always be in demand, but those are going to be commoditized more and more and more and more and more. Everything else is secondary, but the human elements is not knowledge, strategy, and connecting dots, attribution.
So Ken, if we have a listener who calls in and says, "Yo, Ken,
it's Jim from Kentucky."
Jim from Kentucky. I took your advice and I literally 10x my billings, my price, 10x my price, and now I can't get any new business." Why?
You can't just change your price.
Why and what did I do wrong?
Yeah. I think there's so much more to this, but it does start with what you believe, and that's where we are today. Okay. But
does it start with just mindset first? Even if you don't see the change in your billing, just the mindset, the mindset of getting.
If you say all agencies do this, then you're never going to be able to change your price.
Yeah.
And by the way, most agencies are losing money.
Yes.
So if you do that, guess what's going to happen?
There's a recent study that showed that agencies profit 12
Yeah.
about 10 to 12%.
Right, which is
That's low.
which is 1/3 of what it needs to be.
Yes.
And so I can break down, at least from me, how we build our pricing, and it's top down, bottom up. It's value based and it's cost based. So we figure out what our costs. But like there are some equations that you can use that non-agency businesses that are successful, that are not in the service world, use. That's what you need to use at the very minimum from building your pricing. And I'll just say this: it's 5x your cost. Okay, your gross margin has to be 5x your cost. So that's number one. But the only way you're going to do that is, and I know I'm passionate about this because I believe it's a really big glass ceiling for every service business, and I think it hurts everyone. Everyone has a bad experience. Just everyone. No, there's no one that wins. But I think you the other thing is, you have to believe it. And the reason I think I said before, stop calling yourself an agency, here's why. Like, I think you immediately price limit yourself when you call yourself an agency or a marketing agency or an advertiser, whatever it is, website development, because it's commoditized. But here's the proof in it, right? Like, I buy books and read books all the time for like $10, you know? And these books have information that I've used to create hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars. And those same authors at times will have other modalities of how they deliver, you know, and other vehicles of how they deliver that content. And sometimes they're $10,000 an event, or sometimes they're $100,000 masterminds, right? Exact same content. Okay. So what is the reason is you can't charge $100,000 for a book because it's called a book. Okay. There are just certain things when you're called an agency that you just can't change. You got to change the name to change the game.
Ooh, I like that. Say that again.
Got to change
Got to
the
change the
name.
name to change the game. Change the name, change the game. Seriously.
It's part of like creating your own language around things.
Yeah, and I realize that might be weird, right? And I also think you have to do that in a smart way. Like, you can't just do that, you know, with current clients. You can't just like 10x their price.
Yeah.
So I'm actually talking about new business primarily.
Yeah.
There are, so now let's say I would challenge everyone to ask this question. 10, it doesn't matter what it is, but like, I would challenge your entire team and yourself, and really it's yourself, like, just to ask a question, like, just say, how could I charge 4 times as much for this exact same thing? How could I charge 10 times as much for this? And just think of all the ways, and just put this one limitation on yourself. You can't increase the work that you do. It's not, you got to figure out how it can be value based, like it could deliver more than that price in value, than you just legitimizing it, because this is what we do in agencies. We legitimize it by the amount of hours and work attached to it, which is the wrong way to do it. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to charge $1 million and have, you know, $999,000 be my expenses. That's just a giant pain in the butt. So you need to be able to not do it based on legitimizing it for work. And that means, and it really takes, I think there's so much baggage in the agency world around this side of things. I just think it takes a lot of kind of thinking differently. Once you do that, like, there are ways that I've learned to, and I know you guys have, like, to, how do you sell a value-based service, right? Then the process of like getting someone to actually say yes to something that is value-based, but changing the name and changing the model,
yes,
is a big part of that, because
huge.
Then someone's not saying, oh, I'm paying 10 times as, because look, no one wants to pay 10 times as much for a Facebook agency as they do for this Facebook agency. But the truth is like, you're probably not a Facebook agency. You're probably not doing the same thing. So you're doing yourself and that client a disservice for doing that, because they're not going to get the same results if you're good as the one that's 1/10 of the cost. But they don't know that, because you have called yourself the exact same thing. And so I think there's definitely more to this, but it does start with like believing that it's possible.
Yeah, and then once you once you've got the mindset right and you've got your unique offering, I think it's a matter of, and we can continue this on another episode, but it's a matter of looking at your clients and what you're charging them, and then deciding which ones of those are going to be able to deal with this. Like, you're going to have to go to them and say, hey, we're changing our model. We're changing our prices. I'm going to have to raise this. And there's one of two things that we can do. Either I will continue doing what we're doing for you at a higher price, or we will have to cut some of the services that we're doing for you. And then we can talk about this next time, is you've got to be willing to let clients go that are filling your roster, that are not being willing to pay what you are worth and what your prices are. And that's hard. It might be difficult, but I guarantee you there are people waiting in line that will pay. And that gets back to that, that scarcity kind of thing, a mindset. But yes,
and who you're marketing to.
And who you're marketing to. Mm-hmm. And this is the biggest problem I've had in my career, and I've seen other agencies, is we've got to feel the pipeline and we can't say no to anything, right? And then you're sitting in front of that client, you're doing the pitch, and rather than going, I don't have to have this client, excuse me. I don't have to win their business because there's going to be another client behind them that will pay the price that I'm worth. I'm not going to devalue myself for the sake of getting this immediate quick dollar when they're not willing to pay what I'm worth.
We talk about that in here a lot. All these parts of the business are connected, but having a multitude of opportunities is critical to being able to do this well, right? Because you're not beholden to one thing. I have a friend, I don't know if I'm going to get this right, who says it like this. Once someone realizes that you need them, they realize that they don't need you.
That's good.
And that's certainly true. There's like this human, and that does
subconscious sometimes.
There's this subconscious. What about that? That dude in high school who maybe that was probably me. Like, who was like like super desperate, right?
Chasing after the girl,
right? Doesn't get the girl, and then finally he gets some other. He gets a great relationship and now that girl's like. That switches, right? Like that girl turns around and now she's interested in like what happened to that guy. So
people want what they can't have.
People want what they can't have, but it's also deeper than that. Like there's this subconscious, like if you're desperate, then you must not be good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like how could you be good and desperate? Like what if there was the best brain surgeon in the world? He would have it line out the door. Yeah. And so clearly, and I'll just even say this, like one step further, like. If you're the cheapest, you must not be good. Because if there was the best brain surgeon in the world, he certainly wouldn't be the cheapest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many layers to this, and I just think it's so important. And
I think it's worthy for another episode of.
I'd like to talk a little bit about tactics and some of the things that we're all doing and we've seen.
Yeah. But this discussion was really important because you can't have tactics without setting the foundation.
Just got to believe it. Got to believe it's possible.
So one of the things I took from this, just as a recap, is 5 times your cost,
and that's based on other industries.
Right. 5 times your cost, which is interesting. And if you change the name, change the game.
There you go.
I like that.
All right, guys, let's pick this up next time. Get into some tactics, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks.
Bye.